I saw the movie The Fabelmans by Steven Spielberg or Spielberg, and here are a couple quick thoughts on it, and then a reflection on a quote he put. So one of the magazines I get, I rue when I see it every time it comes in the mail, is Time magazine. I thought Time was going to be full of good news and information and so forth. It's full of some of that, but mostly it's a bunch of editorials by leftists, which is fine. People can have their views, but it is not some middle-of-the-road news article magazine. So I think I spent like 50 cents on it for 2 years or something. You get like 300 episodes. I mean, it's crazy the amount of, like every day open the mailbox, there's another Time magazine. The amount of trees they cut, stop. It's just ridiculous. Well, I don't read much of it, but I read this article because I just recently watched The Fabelmans, and so here's an article by Steven Spielberg. The movie itself is somewhat autobiographical of Steven Spielberg's childhood. Everyone knows Steven. If you don't know Steven, Steve, of course, one of the finest directors. I'm sure he'll go down as one of the finest directors of all time in American cinema. He's just incredible and tells phenomenal stories. He's really, really great. The movie's cinematography, as usual, was fantastic. I thought the pacing was pretty good. Music's beautiful, lighting's beautiful, all that stuff. But the movie itself was overwhelmingly boring, and I couldn't believe how boring it was. Most of the movie is about an affair, and he talked about this in an article. His mom really had a years-long affair with a guy who he thought was his uncle, but only Steven Spielberg, and like in the movie, the boy found out, he discovered it, and then it was their secret till she died, and she was 97 years old, I think it was. And so, I mean, it's just horrific to find out your mom's screwing around with some other guy, for all these decades behind your dad's back, eventually get divorced, and then she marries the other guy, and I mean, it's just horrible. It was just a sad, depressing, and I don't like any kind of movie, show, whatever that talks about affairs. That stuff is, I don't like it at all. It's just horrible and wretched. I guess it's just a horrible thing to talk about. So the movie itself was, I thought, very disappointing. I thought it was going to be a movie about Steven Spielberg learning to make movies, and that's about 20% of the movie is him learning to make movies. Everything else is about his mom, who was seriously psychological disorders and probably serious bipolar and other stuff, and unmedicated. But anyway, there's one quote in here from the article that Steven Spielberg said that really stood out to me as indicative of this day and age, and this is indicative of what we call moral relativism. And whether Steven really believed this or not, I don't know, because I have never met a real, true life moral relativist. I would dare say I know they exist and so forth, but as soon as you meet a person who says, there's no such thing as right and wrong, you give them any example whatsoever, and you go, oh, okay, so if I go and kill you or punch you in the face, whatever, there's nothing wrong with that. Well, yeah, I don't want you to do it. Is it wrong to do it? Well, I don't want you. Is it wrong to do it? Is it wrong to kill a bunch of babies? Is it wrong to go chop up people with the machete? Well, I wouldn't do it. Is it wrong? Was Hitler wrong? And they finally said, well, yeah, that was wrong. Well, then you're not a moral relativist, because Hitler could say, who are you? It's my truth. It's my truth to hate all the Jews, which is stupid and horrible and evil. The point is, moral relativism doesn't work, because inside, no one can be a true moral relativist unless you're a psychopath, a sociopath, in my own view. But so Spielberg, however, represents a normal moral relativistic view here, which is just atrocious. It's horrible by its implications, and of course it's morally contradictory, and I'll demonstrate here. So Spielberg is talking about his childhood, and he says, Spielberg says it was hard to go into the screening room after he did the movie to show his family, his actual family members. And he says it was hard to go in there with his sisters, formerly the little girls he coerced into acting in his childhood films. After he finished watching, the kids, he says, as if decades of adulthood melted away, were just falling apart, because it brought dad and mom back to them in a way that was painful but also liberating, end quote. Discussing the film later, Spielberg says, quote, was one of the best moments I've had in my relationship with all of them. We've always been close, but this story brought us back together again as if we were all back in Phoenix, end quote. And then he says, yet, in making The Fabelmans, Spielberg had something in mind beyond sharing his own story. Quote, I didn't want to hurt anyone with it, he says. Quote, there are no villains in this at all. There are simply choices. And we're not villains for making those choices, no matter who it hurts, end quote. I couldn't believe it. This is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. And it's from Spielberg. I was disappointed. I had higher hopes for him. This is just, I don't like using this word much, but I do. It's just, this is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. I didn't want to hurt anyone. My question is, why not? Why is it wrong to hurt someone? Why is it wrong? Because if there's no villains in this, and then we just make choices, you could say, I just made the choice to hurt them. So it's instantaneously contradictory. Well, I just didn't want to. Why not? Is it wrong to hurt people, Stephen? Well, yes. Well, you just said there's nothing wrong. There are no villains. So, Stephen, if you did something wrong, does that make make you a villain. Well, kind of, yeah. It's just it doesn't make any sense. This is contradictory. The other second thing that makes this horrific is there are no villains in this at all. His mom had a years-long extramarital affair. She violated the marriage contracts and covenant. She destroyed their home, wrecked his childhood, and I mean, there's no villains in this? Are you a moron? This whole sense of I gotta protect mom's dignity or my family, whatever, this is ridiculous. The whole movie screams out a villain. Two villains. They had this surreptitious, horrible, egregious, sinful relationship behind the dad's back for years, and then divorced, and then married the dude she had an affair. There's nothing wrong. No one did anything wrong here. Well, if there's no wrong, then why didn't she hold it as a secret? And Stephen, why did you hold it as a secret? Why didn't you go tell your dad immediately? Go, Dad, there are no villains here. They're just choices. Yeah, mom's been screwing around this guy all this time, but there's nothing wrong with that. Dad, are you upset? Well, I'm not doing it to hurt you, but it doesn't matter if I hurt you anyway because there are no villains. Dad, they're just choices. And he says they're just simply choices. We're not villains from making those choices, no matter who it hurts. Stephen, then why did you do the movie Schindler's List? Are you telling me the Nazis are not to blame for hurting the Jews? They're just choices. Is that why you did Schindler's List? Is that why Schindler at the very end of the movie is weeping, saying this ring, this watch, whatever, could have bought 2 more, 1 more, 5 more, and they're weeping and on and on?
If I just...
There will be generations because of what you did.
I didn't do enough.
Why in the world did you make that as a movie that is glorifying Schindler's behavior? At the very end, it says these are Schindler's Jews, and they're putting all their stones on the... Schindler should be celebrated. Oh my goodness, phenomenal. He's not phenomenal. He's done, in your view, he's done nothing good. They're just choices. And the guy who went around shooting people from a distance and the concentration camp, you're just making choices. You weren't a villain. In your view, Steve. I mean, this is so, it's stupid. It's dumb. It's ridiculous. Stephen, how could you say such a dumb thing? It makes more sense to say, you know what she did is egregiously horrible, sad, pathetic, nasty, sinful. I mean, I don't know if Stephen's a practicing Jew or not. I don't know. But even practicing Jew, if he's not a practicing Jew, just a normal pagan, I get it. There are no such thing as right and wrong. In your view, that's silly. Of course there's right and wrong, and everyone believes and everyone knows it. At least you'd be consistent. You'd say, hey, I'm a naturalist. I'm just an evolved chimp. We're just specks of dust. We're chimps on a speck of dust in the middle of nowhere in the universe, and nothing matters at all. That's Richard Dawkins. It doesn't matter. There's no right and wrong. It's just evolutionary impulses. And who gives a rip? Okay, that makes sense. And that's what but then I would say, Stephen, if that's true, then why'd you make all those movies? And he might say, I made Schindler's List not because I believe those things are wrong. I have nothing wrong. I have nothing, no view about the wrongness or the immorality of what the Nazis did. But I know you do. People like you, David, you and your high morality. I thought I would appeal to all you moral people out there, but I know that's all stupid. That would make he'd be consistent. But I bet that's not what he believes. I bet he thinks stuff really is evil and sinful. This is the kind of garbage that is we are surrounded by. We're surrounded by this both logical, self-contradictory garbage, Gallimacius, and moral relativism that is just dumb. Not only does it make evil not evil, it makes people who do evil keep doing it. This is the same kind of gibberish, Stephen, that people who say this kind of stuff, that's exactly what they say when they go to court. After they murdered people and eaten people, whatever they go, this is my choices. I mean, who are you to tell? This is kind of nonsense. So I'm begging you, if you read this kind of stuff, I hope that you as a Christian, and anybody, reads this stuff and go, I don't care who said that. I don't care if it's Steven Spielberg, the president, my aunt Bessie. I don't care who said this. My favorite actor, actress, comedian, doesn't matter. I don't care if David said it. If you're watching this video and I say something dumb like that is immoral, and you go, that's a clear, blatant violation, you don't have to be... You can say, I'm not listening to him. I'm not going to be persuaded by that. I'm not going to be influenced by it because that's gibberish. There is such a thing as good. There is such a thing as bad. And people can be villains. Or they can be villains. I mean, anyway, there are no villains in this at all. Well, I disagree, Stephen. Look, I'm just symbolic. I threw away your trash. I'm just kidding. There are villains in your movie, and your mom was one of them. So was the guy with whom she had the affair. That's all. Tell me your thoughts below in your comments. And if you like that movie, tell me why you liked it in the comments below. Help persuade me, because, man, I wish I could get my money back. I mean, I'm not kidding. I thought it was one of the most boring movies I've ever... It was like 5 hours long. I should have brought snacks